Okay, can you guys hear me? Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. What's up? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. I'm just drinking my Taiwanese milk right now. YS coconut juice drink. Really, really good.
Love that for you. So the people who were in the other space, maybe Kevin, you too, did you guys hear anything I was saying in the last space?
No.
Oh my god, I was giving a whole ass story about my cat and how she's doing.
Really?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, well, because I
Did
was
I?
like, while people trickle in, I was catching them up on the cat lore. But
Bam, I
apparently,
didn't hear shit. Not gonna lie.
I figured. All right, let's just give people like another second or two to join. And baddies are in here. I see Riri's in here. People with the Yeetard NFT as their peer in here. Nomads in here. So as we wait for people to join in, if you guys have any questions on the new PoL spec or just anything that you might want to talk about today, get clarified, I'll dedicate a couple minutes at the end to bring people up and just ask questions. And you can also along the way just reply to the posts. That way it'll come up in the space and we can address it too if you don't want to turn your mic on and ask it. But meanwhile, Kevin, I saw your tweet. You're doing like 20 back-to-back podcast recordings.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
I don't know
hyped.
how
I'm
you have the
hyped.
stamina for that. It's way too much talking in one day.
Most people don't understand the dedication it takes to roll out of bed and tweet 25 times. Honestly, it's harder than it seems,
No, it's
and
honestly
especially on the
so
same
hard.
topic.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Wait, go back to the cat topic. You were talking about. I'm actually curious. What's the whole cat story? I want to
Okay,
hear
the
this.
cat lore. So
Yeah, tell me the
it's
cat
hella
one.
funny. I gave you guys literally like a 10-minute discourse on the cat and no one heard it. I'm so mad. Okay, I'll give you guys a TLDR. Basically, I was telling, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you saw that I posted that I got a new cat. I got a kitty. I got her when she was like a month and a half old and she's super cute. And the reason I got a cat was because I really wanted a pet, but I didn't want to take care of a dog because that's too much responsibility. You got to take it out and walk it and, teach it how to poop and pee. And that's just like a little bit too much for my life right now. So I was like, let me get a cat. But I never really had any, like, I met my first cat this year, like a cat where I actually pet it and hung out with it. That happened only a couple months ago, so no experience with cats. But I was like, fuck it, like I'll get blessed with a good cat. So I went to the place where they have all the cats. They let you play with them to kind of see their personality, which ones are more playful, which ones are shy. And I picked one that was like playful, but she let me pick her up and she was like having fun. And the TLDR is she's super cute, she's super curious, she plays all around the house, but I can't figure out how to get her to stop biting me. And I looked it up, and they're not doing it to be mean or aggressive. They're just trying to play, and especially kitties, they need to play like a lot of hours per day. And they're not like dogs where they can, where you like hit a dog lightly on its nose and be like, no, and it understands not to do it again, or after a couple of times it gets it. Cats just don't operate that way. It'll just make them hate you. And so with cats, what you're supposed to do is like whenever they bite you, redirect them with a toy and have them bite the toy. But that just doesn't work for her. She's just like, no, I want your hand. So I was asking if anyone has cats. I know Keisha has a cat. She told me, she's like, you're fucking up already. But if anyone has cat advice for how to get them to stop biting, let me know. And then we'll get this space started. Now I think there's a good amount of people here.
That's actually pretty interesting, right? Because yeah, I guess you like just tap, you like just bonk his nose, like if it's a dog, right? But if it's a cat, like, that, is that even a solution? Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, and I looked into it, and it's not. And like everywhere that you read, they explicitly say, don't hit your cat, don't spray water on it, like don't do anything you would do to a dog,
yeah,
because cats just don't have the same, I don't know, the same like way of understanding what those things mean, and so
cooked,
it'll just make them hate you and bite you and like attack you more, and they'll just not want to be around you.
cooked. But we've spoken about cats. Why don't we speak a little bit
Let's
about
talk
bears,
about
about
bears.
more specifically Berachain? Yeah, let's talk about bears.
Okay, we have Kevin and I have set some items that we specifically want to bring up because the goal of this space is for you guys to walk away leaving knowing this is what's changed in POL very concretely, specifically, and this is how I can prepare and what that means for me either as a user or as a developer and maybe even as a validator. I saw Kaltoshi was in this space earlier. So maybe we can just kick off, Kevin. I saw you posted a tweet earlier. Maybe while I'm talking, if you want to share it in this space, that would be good so people can see it too. The first thing I think to know is that we've had kind of a vocabulary change where we're not using certain terms anymore. And so specifically, if you guys have been around, we used to use the term gauge. Gauges were the places where people could come and stake their staking token, earn BGT, and now we use the term reward vault. And I think it's a really positive change because as a dev role on the team, that's a question I got a lot, especially from people who are not really DeFi people. I know gauge is a term that is pretty understood if you've been in DeFi or in crypto for a long time, but I think for people who haven't been, it's kind of a weird word. So instead of using gauge, we're using reward vault. Instead of using cutting board, which is the validators setting their preferences for how they want to distribute their BGT, we're using reward allocation. So wherever you would hear reward cutting board, now we're using reward allocation. It means the same thing. It's basically how validators want to divvy up the BGT that they earn and give it to reward vaults of their choice. And then
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, right? I think like the original sort of thought process of naming it like friends of the chef and cutting board is probably likely more to do with like gamifying it, right? And like a lot of people like when they do like marketing campaigns and like, I wanna make it like so that there's gamification involved. But to be honest, it's a pretty technical term, and I don't think like the front end retail user really uses like the friends of the chef. Like it's better off just being like what whitelisted vaults. I think that the other vocab that just got renamed was Bex is now Bereswap, right? Cami, can you confirm that?
yeah,
Yeah, so Bex is now Bereswap. I don't know whether that was because of legal reasons or whether that was because they wanted to include the swap functionality as a sort of like subset of the bearer hub, and so that renames better. But what got me thinking is like if if Ben gets renamed, are you guys just gonna take the bearer borrow name? Are you just gonna steal that from Cobble and Prince? What's gonna happen with bearer borrow?
we're just going to strong arm every eco team and take their name. No.
W.
W for Berachain. No, I think I mean the like you said the thinking behind all of the kind of updated vocabulary is specifically what you said. Like yes, there's people who are super DeFi and super crypto who will be able to either know what it means or figure out what it means pretty easily. But like if you want, and I hate the term like average user normie, but if you want even like a semi-regular user, like maybe someone who's, for example, in like an adjacent community like Bear Baddies, where they know what Bear Chain is, they know what, the bear lore is, but they might not know, like, how would you know what Friends of the Chef is? That's so deep in the weeds where it's like, okay, you've read the docs or you've read the smart contract and you see the variable called Friends of the Chef and you know what it means. So I think all the changes are just like, how do we make it so someone who's not super deep in the Berachain eco and who's read the docs and who's seen the contracts can know what these words mean without having to be in the Discord like, yo, what does Friends of the Chef mean?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, like, it's just a sort of unnecessary, like, overcomplication, in my opinion. Like, there's no. I think it's bullish. The vocab rewording is extremely bullish, in my opinion. I love it. It's great. Bullish for
Period.
Berachain, bullish for everyone.
Period. Okay, next change that I want to get into is block production. And so I think before there was definitely some docs around this, but I think people weren't 100% clear on what this was going to look like in its final form. So Kevin, I know you're a big studier, so maybe I'll just give you the floor. You want to talk about how block production works, and for you as a developer and maybe potentially one of the dApps that wants to have a validator, how are you thinking about this change?
Yeah, so I think I think Berachain's gone through like multiple different versions, right? And obviously that's fair enough because it's like you guys are completely like reinventing something from the ground up. But the previous version, which I'm most familiar with, which I think you guys call V2, was essentially that block production. In block production, all validators have like an equal chance, and it's random, right? So let's say that there's 32 validators in the set, or 64. Let's say 128 validators in the set, then each validator has 1/128 chance of producing a block. But now it's kind of like it's proportional to the staked amount of bearer, right? So an example here is like if validator A and validator B are emitting the same amount of BGT, but validator A has 2x more staked bearer, they will earn more because they produce more blocks. Um, but you may have less blocks proposed, but it's still possible to emit more BGT to vaults than validators with more bearer stake, just because of how the I don't know, maybe you guys have seen this sort of like this curve formulas floating around Twitter, just because of how that's formulated. Does that cover it, or did I explain it well, Cami? What do you think?
Yeah, that covers it. Let me just I'm pulling up the tweet that I made with the picture of the graphs just to share it in the space so people can maybe people who haven't seen the new docs can kind of get a visual of what we're talking about. One second, I'm pulling it up. But yeah, that's spot on. But basically, I think the thing that's most interesting, and I think the thing that a few people have definitely caught up onto and have even flagged it and asked me about it is just because you're producing more blocks, i.e., you have more bear staked, there's still a chance that a validator with less bears staked and therefore producing less blocks is emitting more BGT to the reward vaults of their choice. So I'm sharing this graphic here in the space. You guys should be able to see it at the top. And we'll talk about this in just a second and more in depth. But yeah, before it's like anyone had an equal chance to propose a block. Now it completely depends on how much Bera you have staked, with a minimum amount and then a maximum amount. And the minimum amount and the maximum amount are there to define what the active set is. And so maybe we can just get right into this new. I don't know if it's new, but it's like now there's a lot more information on it, on what we call the active set in Berachain. So before, there's definitely this notion of like equal chance to produce blocks, whatever. But what if there's like 1,000 people trying to become validators? How do you decide who's actually getting chosen to propose blocks? Like, are all 1,000 getting an equal chance, or is it like the top 500? Top 500 by what? So now we've defined what those rules are, and we define the active set as being the set of validators that has the chance to be chosen to propose a block. And the active set is defined by the top N validators by Bera staked. So let's say if we decide that the validator active set is like 50 or 100, it'll be the top 50 or 100 by Bera stake. So if you were to list out all of the validators and their Bera stake in order, in descending order, it would be the top, N of that list would be in the active set.
Well, Cami, I have a pretty interesting question for you, right? How do you think this affects community validators who might not have access to institutional capital with large amounts of bearer flow that could be directed to validators? What's your personal opinion on that?
I mean, I think people like the honey jar, that's kind of who comes to mind when we think of like community run validators, and maybe in the future we'll see some other ones. I think their involvement and persistence in the community is definitely going to be like a big part in helping them get Bera for their validator. But also, like, there's a lot of validators who are not community ones and who will also kind of have the same feat of like they need to acquire enough Bera to be in the active set. And so I think being a community run one is actually, in my opinion, a little bit better, because it's like you kind of have this campaigning ability within the community that you already have such a strong presence in, to be able to kind of secure that spot. And another thing, maybe we can talk about this in just a second. I see Kaltoshi's in here. But another thing to kind of bring up is that if we talk about the active set, and let's say, I'm just going to use a random number just to make it easy to count. There's only 10 in the active set. What are the rules for joining the active set? What if you're like, okay, I'm number 11. How do I become number 10 to actually earn my spot in the active set? And so the TLDR is basically you just have to stake more than the validator that's staking the least in the active set and take their spot. So if let's say validator number 10 in this scenario is staking, I don't know, 5 million Bera. You just have to stake 5 million in one Bera, and you will take that spot, and then that validator that was staking 5 million Bera will drop out of the set and get their Bera returned. So even
Well,
if you're not
that's
in the active
also
set at the beginning, you can join the active set.
that's also pretty interesting, right? Because so let's say like we use that round whole number which you said, which is 10, right? Let's say it's actually pretty tight, right? Let's say that the BGT, oh sorry, the bearer stake, the bearer that number 10 has is like 100,000, and the bearer that number 11 has is like 99,999, right? Let's say it's pretty tight. If the 10th validator and the ninth validator keep on changing positions, what happens with the staked bearer? Does it keep on just getting returned, and then like people have to keep on like restaking with people? Does that become like a sort of like annoying thing, or is it's like perfectly fine? What do you think?
To answer your question, does it just keep getting returned? Yes. Like just by how it works, like at a functional level, if you drop out of the active set, your bear is returned. So if you somehow are able to get back in the active set, soon after, and then you drop again soon after, like yes, you will keep getting your bear returned. And could that be annoying, slash like is it something that is, maybe likely to happen? I honestly don't know. Like I'm not really well versed in like how active validators are in managing their positions and in kind of like staying in the loop. So maybe Kevin, you might have a better idea, or Kaltoshi, as
No, I
someone
mean
who.
it's a very fair like answer. Like I mean, like my question was more general because like across like other sort of like POS chains and stuff, it's a standard practice. It's fair enough. I was just wondering whether like Berachain had something more specific that they were doing to address this, but that's fine. I guess. Do you want to move on to the next topic? I think we've addressed validator set size changes pretty well here. Unless anyone else has any questions.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, no. What topic do you want to move on to next? What do you want to talk about in terms of the tiers?
Okay, we touched on it in the tier shared in the space, but maybe talking about the formula for BGT emissions.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, Cammy, go ahead, please.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, essentially, previously there was a linear relationship between the boost and rewards now, right? But now there's like this sort of complex curve, you would say, a very very sharp increase and then sort of plateauing out. I don't know if you guys have seen that graph, but essentially it means that if you, I believe, like some people charted this out, but I believe that if you have, I think 0.2% or more of the total BGT delegated within the network under your control as a validator, the returns that you get from sort of going above that become marginally different, marginally smaller, right? So it's like that doesn't really affect it anymore. So up to 0.2% of BGT delegated, this is like very bullish if your validator has up to 0.2%. But if you get more than like 0.2%, let's say you have like 0.3%, 0.4%, the gains are very marginal. And that's essentially what this new sort of concave emission function with these new parameters and this complex mathematics is. Like, I won't bother trying to explain this because I personally don't even personally understand it. But essentially, there's like two or three parameters that the foundation hasn't revealed yet. But once they do reveal that, then the emission sort of schedule and functionality of the functionality of all of this will be revealed. But that's essentially the relationship.
And just to add on, I think initially some people were like, why? Like, how did you guys come up with this? I mean, and to be clear, I didn't come up with this. This is the work of our very genius quants. But the takeaway that, they gave us and the rest of the team is like, this is a thing that is put in place to mitigate the risk of centralization. So before, because there was a linear relationship, there was a chance that one validator could concentrate all or most of the boost, and that would be bad for obvious reasons. So this is a way to say, okay, how do we reward validators for, yes, like doing their job and campaigning for boost, while also understanding that it's bad for the system and it's bad for everyone if one or a few validators have control of most of the boost. And like Kevin said, basically there's diminishing returns. There's up to a point where it's like really really good and you reward validators with low boost really really like highly very well, and then over time as they earn more boost, the rewards, they don't earn that much more. And to be clear, when we talk about boost, this is what in the past was called delegation, but now we're kind of very explicitly using the term boost because boost refers to boosting a validator with your BGT, while delegation is going to be reserved for a delegation of like your BGT power for voting on governance. And so with this kind of new clarification, it's clear now to users that you can delegate your BGT voting power, let's say to Kevin, and then you can boost a validator, let's say Kaltoshi's validator, and so you can, these are not one and the same, so you can boost one validator and then delegate your voting power either to another validator or to another person or to yourself. And the boost, what it influences is how much BGT a validator can emit to the reward vaults in their reward allocation. So they get a base reward that goes to them, and then the rest is strictly for the reward vaults of their choice. So it's in everyone's interest where it's like, if you're boosting a validator, you want them to get more BGT because in theory you want them to emit more BGT to the vaults that maybe you're in, or that for some reason want them to get more BGT, whether it's like a community incentive, whether it's like those are the homies, or you're like, yo, that's directly increasing my APY because I'm staking in that vault.
Yeah, that's fucking bullish in my opinion. Like renaming that because like previously, like there was some stuff spread around and whatnot. It's like GBGT and BGT, and if I use BGT, can I use my GBGT anymore? And it's like super clear now if it's like boost versus delegate. Boost obviously for the for the validator side of things, and then on the other side of the coin, with delegating the governance power, just like you would delegate your Arbitrum tokens, like your ARB tokens to Arbitrum delegates. I think a lot of people actually, while we're on the topic here, a lot of people are like sort of like not considering the size and the importance of being a governance delegate or having governance power yet. I think that the ability to control what gauge or which yeah, essentially which gauge gets whitelisted and which gauge doesn't get whitelisted is insanely powerful. And so I will be making this is my moment to shill. This is my moment to shill. On mainnet, delegate to who is Kevin, because I will be extremely active and I will be voting correctly. So vote me and delegate all of your BGT, your governance side of the BGT, to me. That's my moment to shill, and now I'm done. But anyways, I think it's a super bullish, the change of vocabulary, back into like point one about like the change of vocabulary, because now it's super clear which side of the BGT is for delegation, and which side of the things is which side of the BGT is for like delegation in terms of governance and validators. Yeah.
You're getting some thumbs down up here. I think I'm just gonna guess. Maybe people they want to shell for themselves. They're like, no, delegate your BGT to me. But while we're on the topic, this is actually an interesting question to you as someone who's not part of the foundation. You know you're campaigning to get BGT delegation for governance. What does it mean for you to vote correctly, to vote right? Like, how are you going to evaluate reward vaults and decide whether or not they get your vote to get whitelisted?
Yeah, no, it's a super interesting topic. I think that most importantly is that me as a founder, I have like super strong skin in the game. Like I literally, I wake up every day, I check Twitter and I blast off like 5 tweets, and everything them Berachain related. And then I sit down, I have a coffee, and then I blast off 5 more tweets. And that level of dedication to understanding every single aspect of what's going on in the ecosystem, both in the business sense, both on chain, like literally every single possible aspect of Berachain, combines me as the absolutely most responsible delegate, because I understand like every single aspect and moving part that's going on, right? And being this sort of like I wouldn't say mouse, but someone that's able to move nimbly throughout teams and establish communication throughout multiple surfaces and dimensions of different teams, and understanding all the dynamics that are going on makes me be able to understand the entire environment of what's going on politically in Berachain.
And you bring up this word politically, which I like, and maybe a philosophical meta question. If you, let's say, have a good chunk of BGT delegation for voting and governance, and let's say there's an application that's a competitor to yours trying to get a reward vault listed and whitelisted, what's your approach? Are you strictly shark, which there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Are you strictly shark? You're like, no, I'm trying to keep my peace? Or are you like, hey, if this is something positive, or something that's not negative, I'm still going to vote for it? And feel free to answer it, feel free to don't.
No, it's a super interesting question. I think that with delegation and governance and on other sort of ecosystems, for example, within the Arbitrum DAO, one of the sort of most infamous delegates in the Arbitrum DAO is CoinFlip Canada, one of the founding team members of GMX, and he positioned himself pretty nicely, like, or pretty interestingly, right? He positioned himself as a delegate for the builders, and that's how I plan to position myself as well, right? Essentially being that voice for the builders, right? So if you don't benefit the ecosystem of Berachain, and you don't benefit, and you're just here to purely to extract, and you're not actually building something really cool and here for the long term, yeah, obviously I'm probably not going to like vote for it. But if it's something for the long term, and it's something in aligns with the ethos of building for the builders, then that's definitely something that's going to be taken into consideration. But I think honestly, like the fact that Ooga Booga itself is a very agnostic protocol, us being we don't compete with DEXs, we don't compete with lending protocols, but instead we aggregate everything, being that agnostic sort of centerpiece, like it positions me perfectly to be the most neutral and fair delegate.
Got it. And I see there's some folks in here, Jay, Zach, Bear Baddies. I would love to hear if any of you guys are planning on campaigning for BGT delegation. Feel free to request the mic. I would love to hear someone from maybe like a more community perspective. And when I say community perspective, maybe that doesn't have an app directly, that's like, this is the thing, and I'm campaigning for my own reward vault. Someone who's maybe more of a purely community vibe, like, what's your take on how you would evaluate reward vaults? Because I'll give my 2 cents purely from like a technical perspective, not from my preference. People ask me, and I've gotten questions like, how are we supposed to evaluate if a reward vault should get whitelisted? Is it purely based on like, is it based on, do we trust the team? What if the team is anon? Or is it based on like the tokenomics of the project? Or is it based on how long they've been in the Berachain ecosystem? And from a purely technical kind of like safety perspective, I think for me, one of the most important things is when you go to whitelist a reward vault, you have to target the contract that's going to be the staking token. And this is the token that's going to be given to users who perform X or Y action. And then once they perform that action, they're rewarded the token. They can go stake this token in the reward vault, and then they get BGT proportional to that, right? And so I think one thing to keep in mind is like really doing the due diligence around this contract for the staking token. And like that's kind of one of the most obvious things, but I think a lot of people get caught up in questions like how long have they been in the Bear ecosystem? Do we know them? Are they anon? Have they been building in another ecosystem? And all these things are fair to consider, but it's like just from a purely what's in front of your concrete thing to look at, it's like that's one of the first things that I would look at to evaluate kind of the safety and the I don't know, the vibes of this proposal. Like, is it a scammy vibe? Is it a grifty vibe? Or is it like they know what they're doing vibe? And I see a request. Let me just Hamzat. I don't recognize your username. Maybe if you can respond in text, what you want to talk about, I can bring you up. I want to avoid someone accidentally getting up here and like saying something crazy because it's being recorded. But yeah, and then I think kind of on this like kind of in the same area, we're talking about reward vaults. Maybe Kevin, you can talk about like how you're thinking about incentivizing your reward vault, what it means exactly. Like, are you going to use your treasury? Are you going to use your native token? Are you going to use a combination of like some sort of stable token and your native token? Or are you going to use some other token, like some major?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting question. To preface this, I think that us as a protocol, us being like a DEX aggregator, we intrinsically hold no TVL. But obviously, the UGA token will exist, and the UGA Booga protocol will have its own native UGA token with its relevant functionalities, which will be released later on. And so the UGA, pardon me, the UGA dash W barrier pool will definitely have all of the gimmicks and all the sort of bribing and all that stuff, all the good stuff in there as well. But we really have to see the market dynamics first to see what goes on. But I think what the real juice is going to be is with the side door deals with validators. So like personal deals with validators. That's going to be where the real juice is.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's something that's very like tribal knowledge at this point. Like if you know, you know, but it's not something that's explicitly written in the docs anywhere because it's not really something that merits docs. It's kind of more like a social thing. So can you talk about what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm when I say side door deals with validators, okay, maybe that's a bad term. Maybe private deals is better. Private deals essentially is just like not going through the main interface of like bribing this pool with certain amount of incentives, but rather going privately in DMs on Telegram to a validator company and being like, hey, if I give you such and such, can you do this? And if so, I'll give you additional like UGA tokens which are locked or vested or whatever. And then if they're bullish on the token, there's a lot more sort of like moving parts and incentives and stuff which you can gain, and plus obviously the social aspect of it. And with the social aspect of it, there's a lot of things which you can do, such as take them out to dinner, or you can I don't know, take them out to sushi or go for coffee with them and build up that relationship so that they build more trust or whatever it is. So that's the human aspect of it.
Got it. Okay, thanks for sharing that. And I think on my list of things that I really wanted to get to, we've hit all of them. I'm looking through the questions here and I see a bunch of GMs, BMs. I don't see any questions relevant to like what we're talking about, but now's a good time. If anyone has questions and they want to come up on the stage and ask, just request the mic and you can come up. In the meantime, someone responded to my cat query and said, get them a scratching pole, a scratching thing to scratch on, which my cat does have that. And she does use it sometimes. But she also learned how to climb my leg with her nails. So I'll just be sitting at the dinner table and she'll just climb up my leg and then get up on my hands and then start trying to play with me and biting me. So maybe I need to like make her play with the pole more.
What's the cat's name?
Okay, this is a hard question. I gave her a name. Technically, her name is Mimosa, but it's like the name just isn't really hitting. I just feel like it's not the one. Like
Really? You're gonna submit a name change after like a week?
no, after yeah, like literally, because like first of all, she doesn't. Maybe it's like a cat thing. Maybe they're not like dogs. I call her, she does not care. She does not look at me. She doesn't come to me, and I'm thinking maybe it's because she doesn't know that's her name yet. She's like, "What the fuck are you saying?" But also it makes me feel like maybe that's not the right name because I keep saying it and saying it, and she just doesn't. She doesn't look. For a second, I thought she was deaf. I'm like, "Are you deaf? Can you not hear me?" But she can hear. I just think the name isn't hitting. I need to try some other names.
You tried sex on the beach?
No.
Okay, maybe you should try it.
Bear Batty said, give them Batty merch. If you guys make some really tiny baby merch, I'll definitely have the cat wear it.
Wait, will there be Mimosa coin? Will you launch taking Mimosa
When
merch?
mimosa coin.
When
No.
Mimosa?
No, no. She's
Okay, okay,
trying
okay.
to stay out of crypto. She doesn't want to be. She doesn't want hate spewed at her. Like, why the fuck did mimosa go to zero?
Okay, okay,
So
okay,
she's just
okay.
staying
Fine,
out of
fine.
it altogether.
Okay, 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 okay. Fine, 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 fine.
Okay, I see a request. I'm letting them up on the stage. They're just connecting. Give them a second. Okay, I think you're up here. Hey,
How's it going, guys? Hello, hello, hello.
good. How are you?
I'm good. I've got one question. Actually, two questions. Two questions. First question is non-related to Berachain, so it's a quick one. Cami, how many pets do you have? Is it just one cat?
Well, depends what you call a pet. But yes, one cat. But I also have a horse. But the horse lives, in his stable. Doesn't live in my house. So maybe not a pet.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. That's from you. You've shown a lot of pictures of your horse riding. What's your horse's name?
Napolitano. But in my defense, I didn't pick that name. When I bought him, he already had the name. And then I didn't want to submit a name change 12 years into his life. So I just kept it.
Ah, I see, I see, I see. Interesting. Right. Anyway, Bera question. You made an interesting point regarding how you would decide on like a reward vault governance proposal. I wondered if there was a way to quantify this, perhaps by creating some sort of points criteria where it would be ranked. Every proposal could be ranked 0 to 100, and you can use a variety of metrics. For example, let's say if Kevin created a reward vault, he's been in the ecosystem for a long time, so he gets some points for his time in the ecosystem, his contribution to the ecosystem, and then perhaps like the actual governance proposal itself can be voted or like can be graded on a points criteria, and then eventually you get a score. And if your score is above 50, maybe it can be approved. If it's below 50, maybe it gets disapproved.
I think that's a good idea because, like I said, I think there's a lot of people who will just by the way, like governance works, it just happens. People don't participate because, it's like it takes time, it takes knowledge, it takes whatever. And I think having, just off the top of my head, my first instinct is like having some sort of like system where it's very clear how you're deciding yes or no would definitely help people who are like, I'm not an expert enough in this or I don't know enough about this. But if there's something where you can quantify it, like give them a score 1 to 5 on this, I think it would definitely help bring participation up. Kevin, what are your thoughts as someone who's campaigning for a lot of delegation? Is this something that's helpful, not helpful?
Well, I think anything that's going to add to the visibility of potentially a vote is helpful.
I think this is something that, I mean, okay, don't take my opinion too seriously. I don't participate in governance on any other chain, but I think it's something. It feels like it's something that could be activated amongst the community, and have people like opt in to participate in the system without it necessarily being like a foundation sanctioned thing or like a foundation, put it in the UI and checkbox, but rather like a community thing. Maybe while you're up here, like just off the top of your head, maybe you haven't thought of it too deeply, but what are some of the things that you would want to add in this?
I think I was just more referring to the idea of like, let's say, like we can grade people, or like we can grade proposals on a variety of things. Not only the proposal itself, but also some of the things that you mentioned. Like, if someone new to the ecosystem just comes up, then perhaps they don't get that many points. But if someone like myself or Kevin, who have been around for a while, kind of make a proposal, perhaps we get a bit of a points bonus because we've been in the eco for a while, and perhaps like some of the achievements or maybe some of the contributions more so that we've made to the ecosystem give you some points that can kind of help you grade a proposal. I think just to give some credibility anyway. But I think this is something that I'll try and think about a little bit more, especially because I'm going to try and go against Kevin when it comes to governance as well. So yeah, I'll see kind of how we can actually add quantifiable metrics to these different proposals. So yeah, I want to see some thumbs ups, not thumbs down, Kevin.
Well, I think governance in Berachain is actually really like interesting, right? Because in other chains, it's it's not related to the economics, right? And here it's like I wouldn't say directly proportional, but I'd say that there's definitely a directly relationship to the economics, right? Other chains you're talking about, like, okay, let's fund the marketing for this event. Let's spend 500K on from the Polkadot treasury to I don't know, sponsor hackathons or whatever it is, right? But here it's like you're controlling directly the BGT whitelist, right? And so within 1 week, you could technically unlock the incentives for an app, which is really, really interesting. How like economically directly controlled it is. I find that really interesting about BGT governance. Like personally, from the nerd side of me, like that's super interesting.
Perfect. We have another question. I'm gonna bring him up to the stage, and you guys, we can all hang out on the stage and answer this. He sent me a DM. It has to do with how you earn BGT and how it's affected by the change, but I'll just let him come up and ask. Hey, you're on. Hamzat, I don't know if you can hear, but there you go.
Oh, hey, BM guys. My To formally introduce myself, my name is Hamza. I'm a member of Bera Africa. I've been, into the Bera ecosystem for a few months. I think I officially retired from the Solana trenches in June, so yeah, focused on just Bera. And I did find BGT very intriguing to start with. I did work my way up, to understand the proof of liquidity mechanism, and looking at the minor changes on mainnet. I want to ask firstly about the reward incentives. I don't know if we've gotten into that part yet. You said now we are not we're going to be boosting and delegating with our BGT instead of just delegating alone. Do our reward incentives that we get for providing liquidity into a BGT whitelisted pool, are incentives going to be measured by who we delegate to, or who we are boosting, or is it going to be a merge of both worlds?
No, it's two completely separate concepts, right? So on the first side of the coin, you have BGT, which is used for validators and boosting validators so that they can emit more BGT, and then the other side of the coin is essentially the governance side of things. So you can imagine once you receive one BGT from providing liquidity in DeFi, right? That one BGT can be used twice: once for redelegating that to a validator, and once for delegating that BGT to governance. I think that's how to answer it. Cammy, would you agree?
Yeah, but I think he was throwing everything in there, so that the parts of boosting and delegating. But I think his question is, how do we get rewards by, like, as a result of providing liquidity into a reward vault? So that's like a third separate thing. So your rewards and how they're calculated, and relative to what you put into these whitelisted vaults, are still the same. The only thing that has changed is that now we have separate terminology for describing what it means to boost a validator by giving, by quote unquote delegating your BGT to them, and then by, on the other side, directly delegating your BGT for voting and governance. But the system of, I LP into this pool, and then I stake my staking token into the reward vault, and your rewards get issued, that still works in the same way.
Okay, thank you. And I would also like to ask a second question. Sorry for this. I want to ask from a user point of view. For myself as an example, in V2, I think when I started farming for BGT on Batio, I did start a bit late in September, but fortunately I was able to fast track my way on chain to get testnet bearer, and it took me close to, like, let me say a quarter to farm roughly around 20,000 BGT. And that was able because I got my BGT linearly. I was able to I played Grand Conquest because I'm a gamer, and aside from DeFi, I was able to probably make around, let me say, roughly 50,000 testnet bearer from being a top 20 player on the game. And I was able to farm BGT linearly because the more BGT, the more Bera price kept going up, and the more the particular liquidity pool that I staked my Bera in, the more it kept going up, the more BGT I kept making. And now you said for validators that are going to be, getting BGT, it is no longer linear, it is now a more capped graph, like I said. So for users, when we are going to be providing liquidity to these whitelisted liquidity pools, does this cap also affect we users, or we are going to keep earning BGT linearly also?
So I think maybe you're mixing two things up. So let me just try to get on the same page as you. I think when you say linearly, you're describing that you earn BGT proportionally to your stake. Can you tell me if that's what you mean? Okay, okay,
Yeah, yes.
okay.
The more BGT I had, the more bear I had, the more BGT I kept earning.
Yeah, so that still works the same. So like let's say there's a reward vault and there's, I don't know, 100 staking tokens staking in there. And you are staking one of those 100. So you would get 1/100th of all the BGT that goes into that vault. Similarly, if you were staking 50 of the tokens, you would get 50% of all the BGT going to the vault. That stays the same. So that relationship is the same where users are still earning BGT proportional to their stake. So to answer your question about like if I provide liquidity into a whitelisted vault, how do I earn rewards? That part stays the same. The only part that changes is that now, depending on the boost, validators emit more or less BGT to the reward vaults of their choice. And does that affect you? Yes, because if a validator, before could emit, I don't know, 10 BGT to your vault, and now they're only emitting 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, some other number of BGT to your vault, then that does affect your rewards, because if there's less or more BGT going into your vault, then you get less or more of the BGT that goes into there. So I think, let me know if that was clear, but I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, you answered me perfectly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin.
Of course.
No problem.
Okay, I think we're coming up on time here. Just let me check one more time the comments if there's any questions, and if not, hello, Special Bears Illy, POL them up, govern them up. Perfect. Perfect way to close the space. If you guys have any questions, as always, you can hit me up on Telegram or on DMs here. And if you haven't taken some time to check out the docs, definitely do that. All the stuff that we talked about today is written pretty well there, has a bunch of info, and it'll be a good place to get familiar before mainnet. Thanks, Kevin, and thanks everyone for coming through and hanging out. See you guys at the next one. Bye.
See you guys in the next one. Bye.